My brother won't speak to me after his girlfriend joked I was the better choice, and now it feels like I lost my family over something that isn't my fault. So, some background: my brother, John, 28M, and I, 30M, are very different people and always have been. I'm a nerdy guy who likes playing Dungeons and Dragons and works from home coding websites. He's always been sporty and has one of those corporate office jobs where I swear half of his work is just playing golf and going to fancy lunches. We didn't always get along, but we're pretty good these days. He started dating his girlfriend, Jane, 25F, a few years back during what was a pretty low point for me in life. I had just gotten out of a long-term relationship that had ended anything but amicably, was burning out in the career I went to college for, and, in general, was about 2 paychecks away from having to move in with my folks. The stress of it all was taking a toll on my body. I went from the lightly chubby I'd been my whole life to just straight up fat, and shortly after the breakup, I had an anxiety attack so bad it put me in the hospital. It was not a good time to get to know me. I was basically the picture of a screw-up older brother. But I turned it around. I got the mental health assistance I needed to diagnose and treat some long-standing issues. With that as a springboard, I started exercising more and eating better, finding cooking to be a good hobby that also led to me eating less takeout and processed foods. I'm still no Adonis, still got a bit of a tummy, but I'm much stronger and feel better. I was able to quit my job and find a new one in a field that I never considered but that I found I loved enough that I'm going back to school to work on a PhD in the fall so I can pursue it to a greater extent. And finally, I started dating again, someone, I'll call her Flo, who was a better match for me than my ex. Which all brings us to the night things went wrong. We had a family gathering at my parents' house, extended family and all, plus Jane and Flo. I'm making dinner, a beef Wellington. Everyone is raving about my food. I also did dinner this past Thanksgiving as well, and also my recent glow up, my new job, the program I got into, etc. I'm smiling politely and mostly just trying to do a bunch of dinner prep while they won't get out of my way. Then Jane says, "Yeah, never thought I'd pick the wrong brother, but I'm starting to think I might have." You could hear a pin drop. I said nothing, again, just awkwardly laughed at what I assumed to have been a bad joke. Jane's face immediately changed to the look of someone who has only just realized their screw-up. John looked pissed, and the two of them left the kitchen shortly after. From what I could see, she seemed to be trying to apologize to him while he looked really hurt. My relatives said nothing, not immediately, anyway. Flo kind of just winced and later told me that it was really awkward having to stand there, but she didn't know what else to do that wouldn't have escalated things or put me on the spot. That was over 2 months ago, and both John and Jane avoid me like the plague. Not even a text since then. Whenever I meet up with my relatives, they badmouth her over it, and while I think Jane did screw up saying that, I really do think she was just making a bad joke. Personally, I think they're overreacting. This aside, I think she's probably the first person he's ever dated who was a fit for him in terms of personality and lifestyle. The only person being normal about it is Flo, who thinks it was weird but, like me, just a dumb thing to say. No jealousy, she knows Jane ain't my type. How do I clear the air with Jane and John and get people to stop bringing this up? I'm sick of hearing about it and just want things to go back to how they were before. Right now it just feels like a dark cloud over all of our interactions. Update same day. Message John. Grabbing a beer over the weekend. We'll update later. In the meantime, some clarifying info for some of the other comments. Jane is a very nice person, and she really cares for John. She's been with him through some difficult times, including a period when work separated the two of them for 3 months, and they're otherwise attached at the hip. She does have what some call a lack of filter, we've known that for a while. But she'd absolutely never leave him for me. As for why my relatives won't let it go, it's probably because they're a bunch of old Italian Catholics who like to gossip. Which, incidentally, is probably why they didn't like the joke in the first place. My brother and I have a pretty good relationship as adults and aren't especially competitive. My folks and relatives don't favor one of us over the other, though admittedly they do understand my brother's career path better than mine. I agree with a number of comments that the impetus of the joke was that I'm a good cook, especially when it comes to celebratory feasts. John is okay in the kitchen, but he's the kind of guy for whom a fancy meal just means picking up a more expensive cut of steak. I really don't think it has anything to do with me being the hot brother now, as a few comments suggested. John and I have always looked very different. Comparing us would be more a matter of personal preference than any kind of objective hotness scale. He's tall with a runner's build, and I'm a few inches shorter with a wide build and more visible muscles, as weightlifting is my main form of exercise. Lastly, not to toot my own horn, but I've never had any issues getting dates, barring the aforementioned year-long period where my life was falling apart, so I must have been doing something right. Lastly, as some have said, I probably could have saved everyone some awkwardness by playing along with Jane's comment with a "sorry, Flo got to me first" or something similar. I go into what Flo dramatically calls the kitchen death drive while cooking complicated meals, where I'm laser focused on the task at hand to the exclusion of all else, and my responses to questions tend to be short, curt, and even a bit rude. Normally, I would have tried to help salvage the bad joke, but I was searing a big, expensive piece of tenderloin at the moment, so my thoughts were elsewhere. Second update 4 days later. Met up with John at a sports bar we go to sometimes when our dad is in town. Shot the crap for a little bit before I asked him if everything was cool. He didn't really know what I was talking about at first. I had to remind him, that weird thing at the family dinner? And he immediately knew what I was talking about. I asked if we were alright, if they were alright, and lastly, what we should do about our nosy Catholic relatives gossiping about all this crap. First off, he confirmed what I, and most of y'all, thought was true. Jane was talking about my cooking exclusively. She's a big fan, it's actually the reason she came to that gathering in the first place. So that's good to hear. Nothing to do with my physique, though John did congratulate me on the additional weight I'd lost since the whole ordeal. Second, John's issue with Jane's joke had nothing to do with the idea of her leaving him for me or that he'd lost some prestige as the athlete in our family or anything like that. Something I didn't mention in the original post because I didn't think it was important is that John and I grew up middle class, while Jane's family is loaded. Not billionaires, but she graduated from an Ivy League college with no student loans, which she's turned into a well-paying and highly specialized tech job. She and John go on lots of vacations together, have a very nice apartment in a very expensive part of the city, all that stuff. The thing is, while John does pretty well for himself at work, he's not making nearly as much as she is and doesn't have old family money to fall back on. Trying to keep up with her has been putting a significant dent in his savings. Apparently, he's been psyching himself up to talk to her about how they may need to make some lifestyle adjustments so he can put more money away in savings, and he was worried how that might go. Hearing her say that I might be a better option after hearing about my new, to his mind, high-earning PhD program was the sort of thing that came at exactly the wrong time, so he had to walk away. I did have a little laugh at that. This PhD will open a lot of doors for me, but it's definitely not going to make me a millionaire. Adding to the sting of that, while he and I don't have much of a rivalry, he does still have some insecurity about me being the smart one of the two of us. I say this with all the love in my heart. John is an extremely intelligent guy, but you'd never know that from just talking to him. He's a whiz with numbers and knows more about corporate finance than nearly anyone I've ever met at any age. He also speaks with the vocabulary and goofy demeanor of a frat boy. So on top of the anxiety about his rich girlfriend thinking he's too broke to hang out, he was a little frustrated about the idea of a doctorate putting more perceived distance between us. He apologized for that jealousy. I told him it was fine, and if folks were giving him crap, he could tell them he wasn't going to look over their stock portfolios anymore. He also said that he and Jane spoke about the money and she took it very well. The reason he hadn't been in touch lately was because they'd been looking for a more affordable apartment to move to when their lease is up. The only thing that was left was how to handle the extended family. Apparently, John didn't know they were still on about that, largely because whenever he and Jane see them, they just talk about how Flo has too many piercings and swears too much. That gossip was news to me, so we mutually said, screw them, and decided to continue not really letting what they say about our partners get to us. Instead, we agreed to spend more time just the four of us. And, before we left for the night, John did ask me for a few of my recipes. Top/relevant comments. Commenter. High-earning PhD program. Lamau, I snorted. It's worthwhile. I'm glad I did it. But it's not a moneymaker in any way. Ops response. Yeah, this program will increase my earning potential, but not to the degree he was thinking. I'm doing it because I started working in higher ed a few years back, and I'm really enjoying it, but I feel my degree in a different field is holding me back. A master's would be quicker, but that also means a minimum of 2 years where I'm not able to work full time. Fortunately, I had 2 great bosses who pushed me to go for it.